We have all heard the sound, haven't we? That ghostly repetition bouncing off a canyon wall or down a long hallway, a voice that answers us but says nothing new, a mocking copy of our own selves. We call an echo, but before it was merely a phenomenon of acoustics, it was a curse. It was the tragedy of a nymph who could only love by losing her voice, and a boy who could only love his own reflection. It is a story about the desperate need to be seen and the fatal danger of looking only at oneself. Travel back with me to the ancient green heart of Boeotia, to the sheltered slopes of Mount Helicon. Here, the world is thick with the scent of cedar and pine, and the air shimmers with the presence of the immortals. This is the domain of the Oreads, the mountain nymphs spirits of the earth who dance in the footsteps of the gods. They are creatures of the wild, elusive and free, bound to the physical world, yet existing just on the edges of mythic reality. In this age, the forest is a place of power, where desires manifest into fates, and where a careless word to a deity can unravel the fabric of a life. There was once a nymph named Echo. She was not a goddess of Olympus, but a creature of pure sound and motion, blessed with a gift that would soon become her curse. She had the most enchanting voice in all the wilderness, a voice that could weave spells around the hearts of men and gods alike. But Echo possessed a flaw common to her kind. She was a talker. She loved the sound of her own voice, and more dangerously, she loved to distract. Her greatest joy was to waylay the goddess Hera, wrapping the queen of heaven in long, winding tales of gossip and intrigue while Zeus's other lovers made their escape from his thunderous bed. But you cannot deceive the queen of the gods forever. Hera, whose eyes flash like lightning, eventually saw through the haze of words. She realized that Echo's chatter was a shield for her husband's infidelities. The punishment Hera devised was terrible in its precision. She did not strike Echo dead. She unmade her. The goddess cursed the nymph, stripping her of her ability to speak first. "You shall never have the power to speak," Hera commanded, "unless you are spoken to. And even then, you shall have no words of your own. You shall only repeat the last few words spoken to you." Echo was reduced to a mirror of sound, a hollow vessel for the voices of others. She could no longer initiate, no longer confess, no longer cry out in the wilderness. It was then, in her silenced exile, that she saw him. He was Narcissus, the son of the river gods Cephissus and the nymph Liriope. He was not a god, but he was more beautiful than any mortal had a right to be. His beauty was a weapon, sharp and blinding. He had grown up in the mountains, a stag-like hunter who spurned the company of others. His heart was a fortress of ice. He delighted in the rejection of love, watching the hearts of nymphs and youths break against his indifference like waves on a cliff. To be loved by Narcissus was to be destroyed. Echo saw him wandering the woods, his bow in hand, his skin glowing like polished ivory in the dappled light. She fell instantly, violently in love. She burned to embrace him, to whisper her devotion into his ear. But the curse of Hera bound her tongue. She could not step forward and say, "I love you." She could only watch, hidden in the shadows of the laurel trees, her heart hammering against her ribs like a trapped bird. One day, Narcissus became separated from his hunting band. Sensing his presence, Echo slipped silently through the underbrush, keeping just out of sight. Narcissus, sensing he was being followed, called out into the gloom, "Is anyone here?" Echo's heart leaped. She waited for the silence to swallow his words, then called back, "Here." Her voice was sweet, melodious, drifting through the leaves like a song. Narcissus stopped, confused. He looked around, his eyes scanning the dark. "Come," he shouted, his voice ringing with authority. "Come." Echo answered, stepping from behind a tree, her eyes filled with tears of longing. Why do you shun me? Narcissus asked, bewildered by the voice that seemed to come from everywhere and nowhere. Why do you shun me? She parroted, moving closer, her hand reaching out. Let us meet, he said, frustration and curiosity warring in his tone. Let us meet, she replied. She could bear it no longer. She burst from the thicket, throwing her arms around his neck, desperate to press her body to his, to pour the silence of her heart into his embrace. But Narcissus was cruel. He recoiled as if burnt by fire. Don't touch me, he cried, pushing her away. I would die sooner than let you have me. I would die sooner than let you have me, she whispered, the words tasting like ash in her mouth. It was her only confession, but it was his rejection echoed back to him. He could not see the woman. He only saw his own words thrown back in his face. Humiliated and enraged, he fled from her, leaving her shattered in the forest floor. Echo withered away, not physically but spiritually. She hid her face in the caves of the mountains, her body wasting away from grief and shame. The lushness of a nymph faded until her bones turned to stone and her skin to bark. Eventually, only her voice remained. She became the disembodied spirit of the place, a voice in the void, forever answering, forever mocking, yet forever empty. She is still there, in the rocks and the canyons, repeating the words of travelers, a haunting reminder of a love that could not speak its name. But the gods are not blind to cruelty, and Nemesis, the spirit of divine retribution, saw the arrogance of Narcissus. She heard the prayers of those he had spurned. She decided to give the boy a lesson in love, a lesson that would destroy him. It happened in the heat of summer, when the air was heavy and still. Narcissus, exhausted from the hunt, came upon a pool of water. It was a sacred place, untouched by beasts or shepherds, shaded by silver poplars and pines. The water was clear as glass, shimmering like a mirror of polished silver. Thirsty and hot, Narcissus lay on a grassy bank and leaned over to drink. As he gazed into the pool, he saw a vision of breathtaking beauty. He saw a face of perfect symmetry, eyes like stars, hair like spun gold, a mouth that seemed to promise everything. He did not know it was himself. He fell in love with the image instantly. It was a love without cure, a desire that burned in his veins like poison. He stared at the eyes that stared back at him. He smiled, and the image smiled. He raised his hand, and the image raised a hand. He whispered, "Why do you elude me?" And the water seemed to whisper the words back, amplified by the sorrow of Echo, who was watching from the reeds. Narcissus lay there for hours, then days. He could not tear himself away. He pined for the reflection, believing it to be a living spirit of the water. He kissed the surface, trying to grasp the phantom lips, but the water rippled and the image vanished, only to return clear and mocking when the water settled. "At least you allow me to look upon you," he wept, talking to the water. "You do not hide your beauty. I only wish I could leave my body to join you. But alas, I am kept here by my flesh." He wasted away there on the bank, starving himself, consumed by a fire that had no fuel but his own sight. His body grew thin, his cheeks pale, the vitality draining out of him until he was nothing but a husk. Even as he died, he looked into the water, crying out to his reflection, "Farewell, boy."